Hey, welcome back to the channel. You can see we got a bunch of knives on the table today. Um, these are basically utility knives, and I was just kind of in that mood and thinking about utility knives, and so I thought I'd just go through some of these. They stretch from 1900 all the way up to today, but as usual, I started out with a simple concept in my mind, but I just can't leave it be. And I ended up going down a rabbit hole, which I think is going to make the video a little more interesting and maybe a little more thought provoking to some of you guys. So if you're interested, check this out, learn a little bit about utility knives and what's going on with them. I'd invite you to check out the video. Hey, welcome back to the Fortified Castle. Another video after my Long Beach retreat. Had zero encounters with sharks. That's the way we like to keep it. My wife is just paranoid about sharks now because we watch all these shark movies, but I kind of dig it. You know, I'd like to wrestle a shark. But yeah, no, if I had my druthers, I'd really not like to wrestle a shark. But yeah, we had a good time at the beach this weekend. Even though Tropical Storm Debbie was dumping on us and kicking up high winds, it was still pretty cool. Family had a great time. And I want to say hi to all my viewers. I'm trying to get back into production here, getting a lot of content put out there. I was just thinking today, had no plan whatsoever. I was just thinking about utility knives and wanted to look at some of them. This is an excuse for me to bring them out, touch them, hold them, open them, and just get reacquainted with them. Give them some love because they just sit in a drawer locked away, most of them. Some of them get carried. But so as I was doing that, I was doing a little bit of research. I can't help but do that. And I get questions in my mind and I'm wondering, well, what's going on now today? And so I started doing some research on that, where utility knives are today. Do they even make utility knives anymore? And you know, the question is, yeah, but it's not what you think really would be. Traditional old utility knives like these really aren't a lot of people making them, and but there are some really interesting offerings out there. We'll take a look at those as we go through this list here. So we're knife collectors, and the first thing that you have to realize is we have to put a label on something so that we know what we're talking about. And so this knife right here is an equal end type knife. Both ends are equal. Has a cap lifter, can opener, a main blade, and a punch, leather punch, or awl, whatever you want to call it. Really, it's designed to be a leather punch on the back of the knife. And that is traditionally what we would consider a scout slash utility knife. You could see it right there. It has scout on it. And that's because the Boy Scouts adopted this knife, actually requested it from New York Knife Company. That's how they got started. If you look at this knife right here, we call this a cattle knife. It has 3 blades where the Scout knife slash utility knife has 4. And these were really robust knives, meant for use on farms and on cattle ranches in the West. And these knives came out around 1970. Um, 3 5/8 is usually how big these are, set on equal end frames. So fast forward, and if you look at these two knives, they're really, really similar. And so the camp knife, Boy Scout knife, utility knife, all set on an equal end frame, okay, of the cattle knife. They're virtually identical. This is a pretty big cattle knife, but if you look at other cattle knives, they're pretty much exactly the same. This New York knife produced its Boy Scout knife, which is very similar to this, same attachments, with the Boy Scout shield in 1911, and that was requested by the Boy Scouts. Levin says these things came about a little earlier, around the 1900s, and that makes sense. Because the Swiss Army knife came out um, very early, and in 1897 they revised it, and they made let me see, they made this knife, which we call a Spartan today, but this knife is virtually identical to the Swiss officer's knife. So it's not the Swiss Army knife that the Swiss Army used. It's an officer's knife. It was offered in the exchanges and stores for use by officers, became really popular, and they started making a bunch of different kind of knives like this. They made the student knife, was one of the first ones, and then today we call the Swiss officer's knife the Spartan. That's your basic model. These were added over time, your pick and your nail file. So that happens about 1897. So it's a really quick time frame. The Germans jumped on board that and actually made a lot of the knives for the Swiss. They're multi-tool knives, and for a while until um, I forget the date, sometime around 1920, I think, the Swiss companies actually started making the Swiss Army knives for the Swiss Army. I might be wrong about that, but anyhow, this model here is a 5-bladed model. So you have a standard cap lifter, um, um, up, 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 can opener, long blade here. This blade is a saw. And then you have a shorter blade here, which is the extra blade on this knife. The shorter blade is another clip point blade, just smaller. And it had the corkscrew and the awl in the back. And these type models here were pretty much standard after the 1900s for the Germans and the Europeans. And I think somehow somebody got a hold of this. Remember, this is before World War One, so you didn't have American troops over there saying, "Hey, that's a really cool Swiss Army knife." But these started coming into the United States very early. This one right here dates prior to 1924. You can see it has the old style. This was a takedown tool. It wasn't a screwdriver. It's a takedown tool for the Mauser rifle. Um, and it's still on the knife. They had replaced these with cap lifters by the earliest 18 or 1924, and then 1928. Pretty much all of them were using cap lifters. So that's where we get the idea, is these Swiss type officer knives that came into the United States, or maybe people came in contact with them over in Europe, and we ended up this way. So you notice that our utility knife has 4 blades, and that's pretty much standard. And whereas the European model had 6 blades. It has your 4 blades that we have, but it also had cap or corkscrew and an awl on the back. So it had 6 blades, Ours has 4 blades. So some companies in America did, experiment with that a little bit, using an additional, the 2 blades on back, but it just didn't really, resonate with Americans for some reason. And so we ended up with this model right here, going for the next 60 years, being the standard utility model for the United States. Now there was some variation. Here you can see this one is from Colonial, and you can see it's a smaller version. So they did make some smaller versions. They actually made some bigger versions. But for the most part, the standard 3 and 5/8 was what we've used through the first part of the 20th century into the 60s, really, 60s or 70s. This is a Camillus here. This dates 1960 to 1976 is the date that this would be put on this knife. It's the same except for a different can opener. You got the Hawkbill can opener here, as the original ones that were produced early. As I said, there was some variation. When you look at this Robertson right here, they had a patented cap lifter can opener. So this piece is broken off, but it projected out a little ways and could be used as a can opener on that. And then over on this side, they just had, this is not cut off. This was a screwdriver or scraper. So it varied just a little. There was some experimentation with them. Here's one from Schrade. This is a 4-blade utility knife. Has your standard cap lifter and can opener, your main blade, and the 4th blade is on the back, and the 4th blade is a corkscrew. Initially, these knives, when you look at the advertisements, a lot of these knives, they were called scout knives. Some of them were called picnic knives or outing knives, and that's how they advertised them. Some of them were Army-Navy knives, which is kind of interesting because these had not been used in the military yet. So that's kind of interesting that some of the earliest listings, early in the 1900s were Army-Navy knives. You also get this kind of variation. We all know what this is, right? It's a fork-spoon combination knife. But fork-spoon combinations knives split apart, and this one does not. So this is just integral, and it's, to me, I would consider this a utility knife with just different blades on it. And so it has a can opener, and then a main blade, and then you have a fork that's attached to the knife. This doesn't break apart. At least I don't think it does. Good. You know what? It may. It may after all. Let's see. Nah, this doesn't break apart. Anyhow, most of them did break apart, and so they weren't considered utility knives. They were just combination fork spoon knives. But you get some like this that, didn't break apart and are, I just consider that a utility knife with different screwdrivers on it. So I'm going to show you some pictures, what's going on today, and it's kind of interesting to me. As you look at these pictures that I'm putting up, a couple of them look very traditional, like traditional utility knives. And these aren't called utility knives anymore. So almost always they call them a multi-blade and not a utility knife. And so when we think of a multi-blade, we think of this knife right here, a multi-blade. More than 3 blades is a multi-blade to a collector. But this is pretty much where where all of this started in a multi-bladed knives that had a lot of different purposes, for use on carriages, for use on guns, for use on sporting events, for use in fishing, all kinds of different multi-bladed knives that serve the purpose of what today we would call a multi-tool. So that's kind of interesting. And what I think is really interesting is, as you're looking at these pictures, we seem to be going back to the multi-tool and away from the utility knife phase here. And so I think that's really interesting. And as you look at these pictures, they seem to be going two ways. One is the Trecker way, which this is a German army knife. You can see the German signal insignia there, but this is actually a Victorinox. It was made by Victorinox for Germany, and it is the Tracker model. So if you look at the Tracker up there right now, it's exactly the same knife. These are bigger knives, so there you got a good 4¼ inch grip. These are 3 5/8, much smaller. So this is a more robust knife. It has all the same things as this, but also has a saw blade, which I find more handy out in the woods. And so this is close to being the perfect knife for me out in the woods. You can one hand open the blade. The blade locks, so it has a liner lock on it. And I just think these are great outdoor knives. And I don't know why they don't replace some of the other knives. I know they're pretty popular, but I don't think they're replacing some of the other options out there. But you either have this, or you get these crazy options that I'm showing you now, where there's all kinds of different variations in the tools. It's basically a knife kind of design. And then there's a lot of variations in these tools. Those are really interesting. So the question I have is, if you're going to go that route, wipe all the pictures off. If you're going to go that route, why don't you just go to a multi-tool, right? So if you look at the multi-tool, next to a utility knife or camp knife, I've showed this before, they're not that much wider than a camp knife. They're not that much longer than a camp knife. All depends on what camp knife you're looking at, on how long it is. And this is a big one, right? So this is this is a rebar Leatherman. And you get more tools, but you also get this great ability to have a pair of pliers and wire cutters out there. And then all the tools, this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 basic tools, and some of these tools feature dual purposes. Why wouldn't you just go with this? That's what I'm thinking. You get back to these. This is not that much heavier than your normal knife, 1.5 ounces maybe. And if you're risk avert, I carry this every day on my keychain. Have for years and years. You can see it's beat up pretty good, but I think this has been phenomenal for me to have a little pair of pliers handy anywhere I go. I always, you always have your keys with you. And then, whoop, dropped it. And then, you've got a cap lifter on here. You got a small blade that you can use right there. You can see your screwdriver. This is a multifunction screwdriver, so it could do either common or Phillips. And then you've got a little can opener here, cap lifter, screwdriver, And you also have the scissors on this, which I really like having scissors around too. So if you look at this compared to this knife, it's a lot smaller. So they also make Leatherman. This is an old model. I don't even think they make this model anymore, but the PS4. But the newer model is a little bigger than this, more the size of a regular utility knife. So I don't know. It just goes around, comes around, comes around. But here's a model. This one is made in Mexico by Imperial. You see that right there. 1950s, 60s. It has all your standard blades here, and then on the back it has a corkscrew. So that's a 5-bladed one right there. And what else do I have here? Boop, 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 boop. This one is from Wolstingholme. It's a European model, but this is a 7-bladed model. So you have 4 blades right there. Those are your standard blades. Except instead of the yaw, you've got a saw blade, which I just think is tremendously functional. And on the back, they put the awl. So the awl goes to the back. There's an awl right there. And then you have your Phillips head and your corkscrew. And you also have your pick and your tweezers on that. So I think this is a tremendous multi-blade right here. Knife. So anyhow, I'm just musing, I think we got away from these utility knives in the 70s when Victorinox really did a marketing campaign in the U.S. And they went from 12 models to about 36 models in the 1970s. And then after that, it just started ballooning. And that's not exact. I'm ballparking there, but it's pretty close to what I'm telling you. And I think these were lighter than these knives here. These were also expensive to make, and so manufacturers started getting away from these at the same time that I think popularity of them were switching to the Swiss Army knives. And also at that time you had Leatherman coming out. I think Leatherman came out in 1974, if I'm not mistaken. But the Leathermans were coming out in that time period, and so they were filling the heavy-duty multi-tool roll, and the Victorinox was doing the light-duty multi-tool roll, and these just kind of faded. So today, basically, there's a few models available. Spain makes one, Italy makes one, and of course, there's some Chinese makers. Boker is still making their multi-tool, but the thing's $350, and yeah, why would I spend $350 on a utility knife when I can buy one for $40, right? I don't know. Boker's out of there. I don't know what Boker's thinking. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed the video. Kind of rambled there, but that's all I was doing, is just rambling, looking at some different knives, showing you some options, kind of a little bit of the history and the evolution that these knives are going through. I really appreciate you all for your support, for watching the channel. Was talking to Kevin today, Knife Doctor. It's looking real good down in Ellaville, Georgia, November 16th. A lot of people, there were only a couple tables left when I talked to them, so I'm glad I reserved mine yesterday. Hope to see you guys down there. I'm going to take my, not my whole collection, but I'm going to take a bunch of my collection down there. It's more of a meet and greet type of situation. So y'all, if you do come down, you'll be able to see some of these older knives that are really cool and really special, and pick them up, hold them, and check them out. don't think I'll be selling any knives. I may trade some knives. I don't know. I doubt it, but I might. And anyhow, thanks again. Talk to you later.